Hey everybody. So I'm going to be recording this in lieu of my being here today. So I apologize. So the plan is I'm going to go through and talk about each one of your tests from last class, and basically I'm going to grade them right here with you. I've already input these into Sibelius, so we're going to go through one at a time, and I'll point out the things that worked and didn't work on each one of them. Okay. It's important for you not to feel bad about these things. Nobody got out of this unscathed. Nobody actually got it exactly right. Everybody made some mistakes, and again, that's fine. It's a part of learning. Please don't feel bad. Please don't give each other a hard time about it. I know you won't do that. But, support each other, help each other learn how to do this stuff. You're all learning together. And some of you have gotten a pretty strong idea of it. Some of you are still working on getting that strong idea put together. And in either case, it's fine. Okay, so take this for what it is. This is me wanting you to get better at this because it is, stupid hard. All right, so we're going to go alphabetical by first name because that's just how Windows sorted it for me. So we're going to look at Brian's first. So get your piece of music up here. Sibelius is going to start up, so you're going to hear some music. All right, so let me switch over here. So Brian, this is yours. Zoom this in just a touch. All right. So, oops. So if you're looking, Brian, I should have all of these original ones sitting over on my desk. So if one of you or the sub wants to come over here and grab these and pass these out, so you can make sure that I input these correctly. It's possible I might have made a mistake inputting these. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by listening to the first one here. Here we go. Maybe I should make sure everybody can hear that. Let me play it over the speakers instead. Oh. I'm doing it live. All right, let's listen to this. Here we go, Brian, from the top on number 1. Okay, so the first thing to notice here is that you don't have any parallels, no parallel fifths or octaves. Now, this is not the correct answer, or it's not the answer that I got, but it doesn't have any parallels in it. So from that standpoint, you did a great job here because you avoided all your parallel fifths in this first example, Brian. However, there are still some issues. And the first one here has to do with this A sharp that was already built into the assignment. This was me both kind of guiding you, but also testing you to make sure that you understood what to do. Because this is the leading tone, right? A sharp is the leading tone in B minor. Which means that, and this since it's a soprano voice, which means it's on the outside voice, this note has to go up. That means that the next note in the soprano has to be B here. And that's just from the rules, right? So even though you managed to voice lead this with no parallel fifths or octaves, which is great, you do have to follow the rules, which means that leading tone has to go up. So this note here really needed to be a B instead of the F sharp that you had it. Okay. Some other things. So on the last chord here, that 5-7 chord, let's check and look at some stuff. So first off, we have another A sharp here, the leading tone, and you did voice lead that one correctly, so that did go up to the B, so that's good. And our 7th of the chord, you put it here in the alto voice, the E, and it does go down the way it should. So for the most part, actually, you did a great job on this, Brian. You only had one mistake, which is right here, that leading tone going up. So even though this was not my answer, you managed to get through it pretty well, but that one mistake would have cost you a couple of points. I was talking about the second one. Let's listen to it. Okay, so right away we've got a small problem here, and that is that we've got some parallel fifths. And you can see them clear as day right there in the soprano and alto parts. So that's C and F, those are parallel fifths. And you have those going to a G and a D, again, parallel fifths. So that right away, that's kind of like the deal breaker on this one. So as soon as you have that parallel fifths, that's basically the game. But we could talk about some other stuff here too. So on this 5/7 chord, the C7, you do voice lead the B flat correctly down to the A, which is good. And yeah, you also, however, placed, this is a little bit strange. So you've got in this chord C, and then G, then E, then F. Oh, never mind, that's not strange. That's fine. Your E, the leading tone, does go up to F, which is fine. The seventh goes down, which is good. So basically everything here is good, except for that parallel fifth in the soprano and alto right there in that moment. Okay, so overall, you did a nice job here, Brian. One very small mistake here, and one big-ish mistake here. But overall, nice job, Brian. Well done. Okay, I'll save that. So next, let's go and open. Who is next? Clay. All right. So let me switch my window here to Clay. All right. So Clay. So first off, the first one here. Let's give this a listen. And there's some things inside of here that you made some choices, my friend. You made some choices. Whew! You can tell some of that sounded pretty wild, and that's because you've got some misspelled chords here, my friend. So let's go through and talk about it. Let's make sure I got all this written correct. So Clay, looking at your paper here, you did the correct thing in terms of you made your chord pool, which is good. Just make sure that you're really keeping an eye on it. Make sure that you spell these things correctly. Okay, so let's talk about this 1/6 chord here. 1/6 chord in B minor should be spelled B-D-F sharp, and you have that spelled correctly on your page. However, I see a D in the bass, which is correct, a G, and there is no G in this one chord. Then an F sharp, which is in there, and then a B. So basically, you've got this G mistakenly placed here. And I don't know why, but it changes the harmony and basically makes this not into a B minor chord, but instead of like a weird G major 7 thing. So basically, you've misspelled a chord here. And similarly, you've done a thing over here on this 5/7 chord. You can see that the chord analysis shows this as an F sharp minor 7. There's a simple reason. You forgot an A sharp right there. Right? Remember, the 5 chord has to be made into a major. And you did that correctly in your chord pool. You actually put an A sharp down there correctly, but you did not add it in your analyzation or in your voice leading. So that needs to be an A sharp. You did correctly voice lead this to have that go up to the leading tone, which is cool. 7th does go down, which is good. Now, the thing is that you might say, well, Mr. Smith, I got all the way through this thing and I didn't have any parallel 5ths or 7ths. Right, but it doesn't really count when you don't spell the note, when you don't spell the chords right? Because if you would have put this up where it was supposed to be, if this, I assume that you probably would have made this G into D. I don't know actually what you would have chosen. So if you would have put that in a lot of other places, you would have run into some real issues if you would have voice led this and spelled that chord correctly. So, so correct, you don't have any major spelling issues, but you also didn't spell it correctly. So, yep, just be mindful of that, my friend. Okay, on number 2 here, Clay, we've got some parallel issues. So, the first one is right here. You've got parallel octaves between the alto and the bass. So your alto is going from A to G, and the bass is going from A to G, right? So parallel octaves right there. And similarly, you have parallel octaves between the soprano and bass, D to C, D to C, right there. So 2 pairs of parallel octaves does not this a good voice leading make, unfortunately. You did some other things correctly, though, so it's not all bad. So your 7th did go down here, which is good. Leading tone goes up, which is good. The 7th on this chord, the B flat. Oh, you don't have a B flat in here. Okay, so this is another chord that you did not spell correctly. So this needed to be a 5-7, a C. Oh, there's your B flat. I'm sorry. B flat, C. Then you've got 2 G's, but you don't have an E in here, right? You need to have an E major triad in order, or sorry, a C major triad in order to have a C7, and you're missing that that 3rd of the chord, the E. So you've got this chord spelled a little bit incorrectly as well. So number 2 there, Clay, my friend, needs a lot more work. Okay. All right. Let's see who's next. Daniel Guest. No, don't save. Oh my goodness, I almost did the wrong thing. Let's get Daniel's open. All right, let's switch this over. All right, Daniel. So, let me throw an analyzation on this real quick. Okay, so a couple of issues exist in this one. So first off, you've got some parallels right off the bat here. In the soprano, you've got a B to D with a bass having a B to D as well. So that right off the bat, parallel octaves is an issue. Similarly, as some other folks before, you had this A sharp, which is in the answer, so you had to have this A sharp. You missed your opportunity for that soprano voice to go up to the B. Now, I know you might say, well, but Smith, I've got a B here in the alto voice. Doesn't that count? No. And in fact, that would make this really hard for both the sopranos and the altos to sing, because you've essentially got the altos now jumping up such a huge distance and the sopranos jumping up such a huge distance. So you've got 2 voices jumping in the same direction at the same time, which is not, it's against the rules anyway. But the altos would have to be listening to the soprano's leading tone to resolve that chord, and that's just super hard. So this is a bit of a rough spot right here. So be real careful with how you treat your leading tones. Similarly, on this 5-7 chord, you'll notice that this is showing up as an F sharp minor 7, again because you forgot to have A sharp here. So that does voice lead correctly to the B, which is good. However, we have an issue here, in that your 7th of the chord, the E natural, doesn't take a step down. It does move down, but it needs to take a step down. Really, that needed to be here. You should have had this in the alto voice, the E, to step down to the D. So this first one, you got to watch those parallel octaves. You got to make sure you voice lead your leading tone correctly. Be careful about having multiple voices jump like that. And then make sure that the 7ths of chords go down. Okay, part 2 here, Daniel. So you've got parallel 5ths right at the beginning, right here between the soprano and alto. Big jumps. That's big jumps from both of them, and parallel 5ths. So that's a little bit rough on both sides. Same thing, we've got parallel octaves, D to C in the soprano and D to C in the bass. So be careful with those as well. The 7th here on this chord was voice led much better, went down to the A, and your E went up to the F, which is good. However, a little less careful here on this chord. The tenor voice, which has the leading tone, the E, really needs to have this go up to the F here, if you can. It's not terrible to have it go to this note, but really if it was going to do that, it needs to become like the C here, but it might have been a better option, so that it's the fifth of that chord. But yeah, just again, make sure you're being careful with your leading tones. Try to have them go up. If they're in your inner voices, you can get away with them not going up. But if they're in your outer voices, soprano or bass, they have to go up. So this isn't a huge issue necessarily, but the parallel fifths here, parallel octaves here, those are some issues. All right, I'm going to close some of these windows out now. Get on to the next one. Close out that one. Close out this one. Okay. Daniel Miller will be next. All right. Somebody is singing in the bathroom. They have a lovely singing voice, but it's a little weird. It's a little weird. All right. Daniel Miller. So, you made one small mistake, or two small mistakes here, but you did manage to get through this without any parallel fifths and octaves, which is good. Let's give this a listen. So obviously we've got a funny chord going on here. We'll get back to that in a second. All right, so far you've got a nice open voicing here, which works out okay. Until you get to this A sharp, it's locked in the soprano part. You decided not to resolve the leading tone up in an outer voice. So this note really needs to be a B as opposed to the F sharp that you have there. Make sure that I got that written down exactly the way you did it. Yep, I did. You took that down to an F sharp, which frustrates the leading tone, as it were. That also leads to you having this really crazy jump in the soprano where you're jumping and then you're jumping again. Try to avoid that, especially paired with the alto voices that jump twice in the same direction. That's rough right there. That's a rough time, dude. If you were a soprano or an alto, you would understand why that's not a fun time. Similarly, the seventh of the chord here, which is the E natural, needs to go down by a step. You do have it going down, but it needs to go down by a step, not down by a leap. So you got that jumping to the B, which is not perfect. That would have been much better as the alto note, stepping down to the D. Same thing, you missed the A sharp here, and I can see on your paper that you got it correctly in your chord pool. You just need to make sure you double check that whenever you're doing the voice leading, that you actually add that A sharp. So that's why this sounded so funky. It sounded like an F sharp minor chord because it was, instead of being an F sharp major chord, major 7. But for the most part, two small mistakes with some funky voice leading here. However, you did avoid parallel fifths and octaves, so not bad overall, a couple small mistakes. This one, however, you do have some parallel issues showing up. So let's get into this. This first chord right away, you'll see that it's showing up as an E diminished over A sharp. And that's because you're missing a note here. And specifically, you are missing the root. This chord should have a C in it, and it does not have a C in it. Instead, you've doubled the fifth, so you've got two G's, right? But there's no C in here. So you can't very well call this a C major 7 because it doesn't have a C. So again, I can see that you've got that spelled correctly down in your chord pool. You just got to be careful that you actually add all of those notes in. Make sure you don't miss any. I assume that you probably, I don't know. I guess you would have taken the tenor up to a C. I don't know what you would have done here, but you needed to have that C in there. The other thing here is that that E is the leading tone, and ideally it would go up to the F. You do have it jumping to become the fifth of this chord, which is acceptable, but it's not great. It's not great. Actually, no, you don't. You have the jumping to be the third of that chord. So actually, that's not even acceptable. So be very careful with how you treat your leading tones. On top of that, you've got some parallel fifths going on here between your tenor, right, and soprano. So F to C, and then G to D. So parallel fifths between the tenor and the soprano right there. Bit of an issue. Okay, the rest of this is fine. Again, here's the seventh of your chord, the B flat. This needs to step down to the A, not leap down to the F in this case. So this isn't a huge deal, but this would have been much better to have the B flat here so it steps down to the A. Your leading tone is voiced correctly to go up to the C. So some issues there, nothing major, but some issues. All right, let's listen. Who's next here? Next is Eli. All right. So this one's pretty close, but has some issues as well. Let me get this switched over. All right. Okay, let's listen to it first. So this is almost exactly right. You did make one small mistake, well, two-ish small mistakes here. One is that on your original, you missed this A sharp right here. Okay, so just be careful, Eli. Make sure that that's not an A natural. That should be an F or an A sharp. I did add it, and I circled it on your paper too. Not a big deal. Again, you voice led it correctly. Oh, my phone's ringing. Sorry. My apologies. You did voice it correctly. You just missed that that's supposed to be sharp. So just be careful. I can see in your chord pool too that you had it written correctly there. You just got to make sure you add it when you do your voice leading. The big issue here is that you've got parallel octaves, and you've got them in your tenor and bass right there. So D to C and D to C. That's the biggest problem. And you got to be really careful and mindful about that. And the reason why is because there's really only one way to do this without having any major issues. And you were close to it. You were very close to it, but not quite there. So, little thing, be careful with the leading tone and making sure that you have it spelled correctly in a minor key. And then parallel octaves, be careful. All right, on this one, you're also quite close, but I think you made a small mistake. Let's give this a listen. Okay, so this is not bad. You do have a weird spelling thing here, and that is this chord, 5/7 chord, is supposed to be C, E, G, B flat. I assume that you just put this D in the wrong spot, and that's supposed to be right there, which would make this basically perfect. And this would have been the correct answer if you had that one little thing. So you basically got the right answer with this. I assume you just made a very simple little mistake there. Oh, I'm getting another phone call. All right, I gotta pause this. No, I can't pause this. I'll just call them back. Unless you're gonna hear me take a phone call. You're gonna hear me take a phone call. Hello. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, what's up? Yes. Well, okay. Hold on now. Oh, goodness. All right. So I'm making a theory video. I'm going to have to pause this video, theory kids, because it's about to get serious. Okay, sorry about that, theory friends. I'm back. That phone call was a little spicier than I initially intended. I honestly have no idea where I was at. This is Eli. Eli's. Okay. Oh, yeah. I think you just made a small mistake here, Eli. Otherwise, everything is great. So a couple of small mistakes and some parallel octaves is all that kept you from getting it basically right. So nice job. Just watch out those little tiny details. All right, next, who we got? Jack. All right. So this was also quite close. Some little tiny mistakes is what separated you, or kept you from getting everything correct here. So let's listen to this. Woo! Yeah. So on this first one, you can see that some of these chords are quite crazily spelled. We've got an F sharp, sharp 9 over C sharp. And you might say, what? That's not what that's supposed to be. Yeah, I know. You made a really simple mistake, and that is basically you've got an A in here and an A sharp. And I'm pretty sure you intended that to be a different note in the tenor. So that is a 5 chord. I'm guessing you meant for that to be either an A sharp and you just missed the accidental, or maybe you meant that to be another chord voice. I don't 100% know, but in either case, that is not spelled correctly. So you've got C sharp in the bass, F sharp, A sharp, which is great, and it's only supposed to be a triad, so it doesn't need to be a 7th chord. So it's already fully voiced. You just got to decide where that's going to go. So that A, however, cannot be there because what? So if you just made that an A sharp, then that's not too bad. You also forgot to have this A natural, or you have this A natural here, which is supposed to be an A sharp. Again, in your chord pool, you did that correctly. You just forgot to do it in your 4-part writing. Now, you do have another issue here. It's not a parallel, but you have a C here in the alto part and this high screaming E in the sopranos. That is more than an octave between two voices, which you cannot do. So be real careful with that. Additionally, you've got that E, which is the 7th of this F sharp major 7, needs to go down by a step, not down by a leap. So this really should have been the alto voice in order for that to step down. Additionally, you do have this voice lead okay, that A sharp will go up to the B, and that's okay. But I think you would have had some parallel issues with this if you would have had some of these chords spelled correctly, or if you would have fixed some issues here. So on the face of it, it's not bad, but there's some spelling mistakes that and some voicing mistakes that are creeping their way in here. Okay, on number 2, let's listen to this. Okay, there's only really one mistake here, and that's some parallel fifths, which is in between, the alto and tenor voice. So D to G to F to B flat, right? Oh wait, that's not it. Those aren't the parallels. Where are they? Oh wait, yeah, they are. So this one's a little harder to see because of the way that they're spelled. So D to G, G to D is a parallel, or is an open fifth, and then F to B flat is also a fifth, right? But it's just you got them switched between the different voices. So that is still parallel fifth. That's really hard to see, but is still parallel fifths. G to D. Yeah, that's correct. So just be careful with those. That's a really hard one to spot, so I can see why that was an issue. Otherwise, this one is actually quite good. You've got the B flat, the 7th of the chord, voice led down to the A, which is good. The E goes up to the F, which is good. On this 7th chord, there's another issue. Oh, wait, no, you got it. There's that. It's in the bass. Nope, yeah, actually, this 7th chord is spelled correctly, too. Yeah, so I think this is pretty solid, besides that parallel fifth. Yeah. All right, nice job, Jack. Next, James. All right, let's give this a listen. James, you're also quite close here, just a couple small mistakes. So, strangely, you and Jack made basically the exact same mistake with this A, right? You've got this as an A natural, and I assume that you meant this to be an A sharp. That's the logical thing to do there. Otherwise, that chord just doesn't make a lot of sense. You did manage to get through this with no parallel fifths, which is very solid. Your soprano line, I think, is the correct one, I think. You did miss the A sharp here in order to make that into a major 5 chord instead of a minor 5 chord. Again, on your chord pool, you have it written down correctly. You guys are, it's not that you're forgetting to make it a major chord. You're all remembering. You're just not making it a major chord in your actual 4-part writing. So you've done the hard part and remembered that, but you actually have to add that A sharp into it. You cannot just assume it. You actually have to write it in. Yeah, so otherwise, I think this is the correct soprano line, and I think this might be the correct answer too. You just missed some spelling things. Okay, on the second one, you do have some parallel octaves here. Let's give this a listen. Okay, so, hey. Parallel octaves are, where are they at? This is super open, and all your voices are moving in the same direction, so you know you're going to have some issues. Where are they at? Oh yeah, right there in the tenor and bass. So you've got A to B flat. Wait, no, that's not it. Oh, there it is. Alto and tenor. Wait, no. No, alto and bass. Ha! No? Yes, alto and bass. My gosh. Yeah, A to G in the bass. There we go. So just be careful. Make sure that you are avoiding those things. Basically, your warning sign on this is anytime you've got all 4 voices moving in the same direction, you're basically guaranteed to have some parallel fifths or octaves somewhere. You can't really avoid it in that situation. So this was a tough chord to voice lead out. This was basically the chord that you had to figure out with this assignment. So yeah, you have to just spend some time and revoice all of that to get it right. Otherwise, this is pretty solid. There is some interesting spelling stuff in that you did not have a 7th chord on this last chord. This is just a C major chord as opposed to a C7 chord. So you're missing a B flat. I don't know where you would have put it. You've got the roots doubled, so I assume maybe you would have put the soprano on a B flat. That would have been the 7th of the chord, which would have voice led down to the A correctly. But I don't know since that's not what you did. Just be really careful that if it asks for a 5-7 chord, make sure that you give it a 5-7 chord. So overall, James, not bad. This first one, the top one, was very close, just some small mistakes that kept you from having it exactly right. Then here on number 2, you just got to watch those parallels. All right, next. And it is Phoebe. All right, Phoebe. So, the first one here, let's give this a listen. And I think this is not the answer that I put, but I think this is completely correct. I think this is the one that is. Yeah, I think this one is. So I think you did a great job on this one. Good voice leading. Got A sharp going up to B, which is correct. Basically, you had to do it that way. On this chord, again, you got A sharp up to B. The 7th of the chord, E, right there, does correctly go down by a step to the root, which is good. Or sorry, goes down to become the 3rd of the final chord. Yeah, last chord is all a tripled root with a 3rd, which is perfectly fine. Like I said, this is not the way that I intended this to go, but it looks like that is a solution that works. So well done on that one, Phoebe. On the second one here, we do have a bit of an issue. Let's give this a listen. Yep. And that issue is right here between the soprano and the alto. So we've got this is a perfect fifth, going to a perfect fifth, G to D, right there. So again, this is the same spot that James had trouble with, and that everybody really had trouble with, is how do you voice lead to that 2 chord without causing issues? And there's only really one way to do it, and that's not the one. Everything else is good. You do have the 7th of the chord here in the tenor. That, again, does go down, but it needs to go down by a step, not down by a leap. So ideally, that B flat should have probably been here on the soprano. But, you know, that's not a huge mistake, but it's not ideal. But that parallel fifth is the big one that needs to get fixed. Overall, did a nice job here, Phoebe. Seems like you really got a pretty strong handle on this. Next. Rhys. All right. So, let's see this. All right, here we go. Let's give this first one a listen. Yeah, so you got a little out there in some of these chords. I like them, but they're not perhaps the one that we intended to have. Okay, so let's go through this and talk about it. I will say that you don't have any parallel fifths or octaves here, which is good. But you have some interesting chord spelling things. And looking at your stuff here, Rhys, you did not make a chord pool. Like, you didn't go through and fully write out all of your chords. And I would ask you why you didn't, especially because you made some chord spelling mistakes later on, right? There's no reason not to do that. It's not cheating, and it just gives you another way to make sure that you get the little things correct. All right, but you did avoid all parallel fifths and octaves, which is something. Okay, so the first place where things got a little bit out of whack here is this is the leading tone, right? That A sharp, and that has to be a B, not a C. I assume this was just a mistake and you meant that to be a B and not a C. I can see that you've erased a few things a few times and maybe you just misplaced that note. It happens. It's not a huge deal. And if that was placed correctly, then this chord is closer to being a B chord, but you're now missing the third of this chord, right? So you need a D somewhere in this chord. We got B, and now a B, and then an F sharp. Maybe you meant this to be a D, which would have been a fully voiced B minor chord. That's possible. I don't know what you meant. What you had was a C, which doesn't fit into B minor, right? Which is why it's calling this a sus2, is because that's the suspended second note. Right? Okay, this chord, I'm not 100% sure what you were after on this chord, because it's spelled pretty interestingly. Oh, wait a minute, you do have a chord pool down here. You just did it a little bit differently. Oh, I see. Okay. You did kind of do this. You got to be careful, because you forgot that has to be a C sharp E G instead of a C E G, and that does matter. So even still, you wrote that down, but then you've got this G, you got an F sharp in here, which isn't in that chord. I don't know what this F sharp is supposed to be. An E and then a C. So I assume this F sharp was supposed to be a G. I don't know, though. In either case, this is just a chord spelling error, and you want to really be careful about those kinds of things. It's also, as it is right now, you've got your more than an octave between your soprano and alto, so be careful with that. Same thing with this chord. You've got more than an octave between soprano and alto. This is mostly spelled correctly. There's some stuff here. So this is supposed to be an F sharp major 7, and you have this as an F7. So on your paper here, you've got that spelled F-A-C-E, which is an F major minor 7, but this is supposed to be an F sharp major minor 7. So that's supposed to be F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E, and that does change things. So you got the E, you got a C sharp, that's fine. There is no B in that chord, and that's supposed to be an F sharp, which it is, but you're missing a lot of notes here. So you're missing an A sharp, and you're missing an E. Well, I guess you got that. Basically, I guess this, yeah, I guess this B is supposed to be a C sharp, maybe? I don't know. I'm not sure how you wanted that to be voiced. But in either case, again, this is just a chord spelling error. And then as a result of that, it's hard for me to talk about leading tones. I mean, I guess that's your leading tone, sort of. But it needs to go down by a step as opposed to a leap. And then the leading tone, which would have been an A sharp, isn't present here. Maybe that one would have been here. Maybe that would have been an A sharp. And then that would have been voiced like correctly. I'm not sure. So no parallel fifths or octaves, but you do have to make sure that your chords are spelled correctly. All right, Rhys? So just be mindful of that. Okay, on this one, your chords are all spelled right. Well, mostly spelled right. You've got one little mistake here we'll get to in a second. But you got parallel fifths and octaves. Let's listen. So this first chord is supposed to be a C major minor 7, and you instead spelled this like a B flat major 7. So I think you just spelled the wrong chord here. And on your chord pool, you have this spelled as B flat D F A, which is like a 4/7 as opposed to a 5/7, right? So this needs to be a C E G B flat. So that's what's going on here. This is a chord, but it's the 4/7 chord as opposed to the 5/7 that it's asking for. So just be mindful of how you spell that chord, right? If this were a 4/7 chord for whatever reason, that would have been the 7th, which I guess you kept as, you know, instead of going down, you kept that across, which probably is not the worst choice, but it's just the wrong chord, basically. You do have some parallel fifths between the soprano and alto, so F to C, G to D, right? Those are just parallel fifths. Can't do that. And you have parallel octaves here, D to C in the soprano, D to C in the bass part. This last chord, interestingly, you did spell correctly. You knew this was supposed to be a C, E, G, B flat. I guess you just made a mistake and made that to a 4/7 instead of a 5/7, because this chord is written down correctly on your paper. However, you're missing a B flat in here. You've got a C, you've got an E, you got a G, and then you added an A. And maybe I'm just reading this wrong. Maybe that is supposed to be a B flat, and it's just, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say that that was a B flat. Just got to be careful that when you write it, I don't have to guess on what it is, right? And if this was supposed to be your B flat, that is the 7th of the chord, which needs to go down by a step, not down by a leap. And so that's a leap right there. Do go down by a leap, do a leap, do a leapa. Confused. All right, anyway, so not bad overall. The biggest thing here, Rhys, make sure that you spell your chords correctly. Okay? Gotta spell your chords correctly. Next, we got Salem. All right. So, Salem on the whole, he did pretty nice here. A couple of little things. Let's listen to the first one. I think you'll hear some issues. Woo! I love that. I love this chord right here. It's beautiful. That B flat add 9. It's a beautiful chord. It's not what it's supposed to be, but it's beautiful. Oh, with that C there, man, it's tasty. Not right, but it's tasty. Okay, so you actually did quite well in terms of avoiding parallels here, which is good. But we do have some issues. Your first one is that A sharp has to be followed by a B, right? That is the leading tone in B minor. And in an outside voice, the soprano, that has to go up to a B. and you dropped it down to an F sharp instead. So that's the first big fix here. The next one is that this is supposed to be a B minor chord, and I think probably you just made a mistake and added that C there. I bet you intended that to be a B. I don't know that to be true, but probably. If you did intend that to be a B, you got to be careful here because you're actually crossing voices. That B is lower than the D in the alto. Or sorry, the D in the tenor. So believe it or not, that note right there is higher than this one, and you can hear it. Da, da, right? Which means you're crossing voices. So you could have fixed that by moving that up to there and this down to there, but that might have caused issues in other places. Yeah, that would have given you parallel octaves right there in the tenor and bass, which I'm guessing you were trying to avoid by doing this the way you did. However, that's not the way to avoid it, right? Just be careful with that moment. Okay, otherwise this is quite good. The E here in the which is the seventh of your F sharp 7 chord does go down by a step, which is cool. A sharp goes up to B, excellent. The rest of your chords are spelled correctly, no parallel octaves or fifths, so you're quite close. But that voice leading thing right there, and then this misspelled chord is what's holding you back from having this all the way correct. All right, here is the number 2. Let's listen to it. All right. So the second chord here, this is supposed to be a C7. The problem is you're missing the third of this chord. We've got a C, there's no E, we've got 2 G's, and then there's our B flat. So you're missing the third of the chord here, which is important because that's what makes it major or minor. So be mindful of that and be careful with that. I assume maybe you meant that to be an E flat here. I don't know. But that would have helped out, at least made that a fully voiced 5/7 chord. As it stands now, we do have some parallel octaves, that being the G to F, right? G to F in the alto, G to F in the tenor. So you probably could have fixed a lot of things by making that an E as opposed to a G. That would have fixed your parallel octaves, and it would have given you a fully voiced 5/7 chord here. So little things, but important things. This chord is a little bit interesting. So the 4 chord in F major is supposed to be a B flat. I see a B flat. I see a D. I see an F. That's all cool. I don't know what this A is supposed to be, though. That would make this like a 4/7 chord, which isn't really a thing. So I don't know if you just spelled this incorrectly or if you meant that to be a B flat. I don't know. But this is not asking for a 4/7. This is asking for a 4 chord, a 4 triad, right? So a B flat major triad in first inversion is what that 6 is denoting. Which you basically spelled, but you just added that A to it. So I'm not sure what's up with that. So be careful. Here at the end, 7th goes down, leading tone goes up, which is good. So besides, I think if you just would have figured out that fix right there in that second chord, I think you would have had this, Salem. I think you were right there on it. And then this little weird spelling mistake here, which I assume is just a small, easy mistake. So it seems like you're on the right path here. Just be really mindful of your leading tones and making sure that you have all of your chords spelled completely correct. Okay, cool. Next is Yahir. All right. So let's give yours a listen here, Yahir. I think this is exactly right. The first one here. I think you got it. Let's see. 7ths go the seventh of your chords, the E, goes down, leading tones up, leading tone up. No parallel fifths, no parallel octaves. I think you got it. Spelled correctly. Yep, I think you got it. Nice job. Well done. This one does have some issues. Let's give this a listen. It really only has one issue, that being parallel fifths right here between your soprano and alto, right? F to C is a fifth, then those jump to another parallel fifth, G to D right there. So I think if you would have restructured this, again, this is around that stupid 1 to 2 chord, which is rough times. I think you could have avoided all of those issues there. However, seems like you got this pretty well figured out. Just avoid those parallels. But all your chords are spelled correctly, all the rules are followed. Like I said, you got the first one right, and the second one you were quite close. So it seems like you got it figured out. Okay, I'm sure you're all dying to see the correct answer, and I will provide you the correct answer. So let's take a look at the answers. Now again, this is my answer. So this is, it looks like there was another way through the first one, a slight variation. But this is as it's supposed to be. So here's number 1. And I didn't pull these from a book or anything. I wrote these myself. I just chose the chord progression and I did all the work here too. So, oops. Let's not grab the right video here. Let me go back and get the right video. There we go. Sorry. There you go. Now you can actually see it. So I did the actual work here. I didn't fake it. So I understand the difficulty that these provided. And as you can see, my result has a really crappy soprano line. Whee! Not hard to sing. And not very fun either. The tenor line is interestingly quite interesting and very adventurous. Right, interesting. Mostly stepwise, a little jump here, but mostly stepwise. So no parallel fifths, no parallel octaves, voice leading, sevenths going down, all the stuff. This one was hard, and this is the same thing. I came up with this chord progression, had to do all the work myself, and I had the exact same trouble that you guys did, getting this stupid 1 to 2 chord to happen correctly. And this is how I did it. And I think this is the only answer. I don't think there's another variation on the answer. So basically you had to do it like this. This seventh chord here, the seventh is already in the bass, so it does its thing. The leading tone, E, goes up to F, even though it doesn't necessarily have to, but it's just how it voice led easily. On this 1/6 chord to the 2 chord, so all the voices except for the tenor are going down, but that tenor avoids a lot of issues. So basically what I had to do is several times I started this thing, and the reason why I gave you this first chord was because this is what sets you on the path to get this correct. And even though I didn't provide you the tenor part on that one, I gave you the first chord, hoping that you would get to this solution. But I had to restart this thing a bunch of times in order to get that chord to work correctly. That is the only way to do it. And once you get that chord set, the rest of this basically has to be this. There's no other way to do it, really. And this is, this is how it goes. Sometimes you have to go through and just continually hack at the thing until you get it right. And that's just a part of it, my friends. Okay, so that is that's your tests. I think I'm going to give you guys a break from this for the weekend. I entertained the idea of making you do another homework assignment, but I think a break will do you some good, some time away from this, because you guys have had 4 straight assignments or a test for the last week and a bit, and you've worked really, really hard, and I think you've done well. So what I think we're going to continue to do is on Tuesday when we're back in class, I think we might do some chord spelling games. We might do some triad and 7th chord spelling games, because it seems like that's a thing that everybody needs a little bit of help with, is just a quick reminder of how to spell these things and get those fresh in your brains. And then really probably just another practice exercise, because it seems like in general, you know, you're either, the biggest mistakes you're making are spelling the chords correctly, which we can fix by just, you know, doing chord spelling games. And then just the part writing rules themselves, which mostly seem to revolve around making sure that we get the sevenths to go down by a step. That seems like it was the most commonly missed thing. So we'll focus on some more of those kinds of voice leading examples in class. So next class, expect that we're going to play some triad games or some chord spelling games. I do want to introduce to you the Neapolitan and Italian and German and augmented 6 stuff. So we'll probably do a little bit of that next class as well. But yeah, I think that'll be it for the day. You guys did a great job with this. I'm actually quite pleased with all of your assignments. I don't know how I'm going to grade them yet. I don't know. Obviously, I'll figure that out. I'm not going to tank anybody's grade here at the very end, so I'm not going to do anything like that to you. So don't, if whatever your grade is right now, I'll swing it so that's your grade for the final 2, or like for the end of the grading period. So I'm not going to surprise anybody. I'm not after that. Like I said, I think in general you guys have done a great job here. So well done. All right. I hope you all have a good weekend. Sorry that I have missed your class twice. It's just how it goes. But be safe, make good choices, and if you guys have any questions, you can get a hold of me, okay? All right, bye-bye.